I am here today with Kimberly Job. She is mom to Angel Alexandria. Kimberly, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Kimberly Job, but a lot of people say Job because
Okay.
of the way it's spelled, which is fine. I'm used to it. My daughter is Alexandria Caitlin Job. I live in Wilmington, Illinois, and I have two other children who are living, but Alexandria was my first. So I do have a daughter, Danielle, and a son, Jackson.
How old are they?
What else? Okay, Danielle is 13, and Jackson is 5.
That's sweet. And can you tell us when you first heard about CDH?
When I was about 20 weeks pregnant with Alexandria.
20 weeks pregnant with Alexandria. Was it just your normal ultrasound that you went into for just to check on how the baby was growing, and then some people call it the gender ultrasound?
Yeah, I think it was that. I wasn't sure if I was going to find out what gender she was, but we were excited just, to see her. And the ultrasound well, actually, it wasn't an ultrasound technician. It was my maternal fetal doctor, because I have diabetes. So, and when I'm pregnant, it's more severe, I guess you would say. So I have to take insulin and things like that. So my doctor was doing the ultrasound, and he kept kind of frowning at the screen and kept going over everything. And then he told me that when it was done, he kind of sat with me and just said he didn't want me to be afraid or alarmed, but that she either had congenital diaphragmatic hernia or a cystic edematoid malformation, which is like cysts in the lungs, but he wasn't sure yet.
Okay.
So then I don't know, as people do, I guess, I went home and Googled it and read more information about both of them. And because there was a problem detected, they decided that I needed to come I think it was like 2 weeks or a week, to check everything. And they started doing non-stress tests, just a lot of things that normal pregnancies don't require at that early of a, gestational period.
Right. Tell us, how did you plan for delivery? Did you have to move? Was your hospital close by?
Yes, so I'm really close to Chicago. I'm in the suburbs of Chicago, and the hospital that I've gone to since I was like 6 months old is equipped to handle CDH babies, but they just didn't have ECMO. So I met with a perinatal nurse, and she and a whole team of NICU doctors and nurses, and they explained to me what congenital diaphragmatic hernia was as I was getting closer to delivery. They just said that she was going to need extra care, but they believed it was left-sided, not right-sided. So when I Googled everything, it said that left-sided babies had a greater chance of survival than right-sided. They briefly touched on ECMO, but said she probably wouldn't need it. So I kind of just shut that part of my brain off as far as it being right-sided and just ran with the left-sided. But when she was born, there was so many people in the room, ready and waiting for her. At that time, they believed that a C-section was not good for CDH babies. So they were doing everything they could to have me actually deliver her, vaginally. But I was struggling. I had been in labor for a long time, and I had been pushing for like 3.5 hours when they decided to use suction to assist me. So with the suction, she was able to, I think it was maybe only 2 or 3 more pushes, and she came out. And then they whisked her off to the NICU real quick because they put something in to make it so she wouldn't start breathing. So I didn't get to see her until a couple hours later, because they said that, they had to get her all stabilized, and I had to wait for the epidural to wear off so that I could actually walk around. I didn't wait for the epidural to wear off, though. I just told them to bring a wheelchair because
right, you needed
when
to
you
see
don't,
your baby.
Right, when you don't get to hold your baby after they're born, you're just like, just let me go. I need to see her. I need to see her for more than just that few seconds that you showed me her. So we went into the NICU, and we were greeted by a neonatologist who explained that she did have congenital diaphragmatic hernia, not the cystic edematoid malformation, which I already was kind of prepared for. They showed us x-rays, but to me, the x-rays looked like it was more on her right side than her left side. So I asked, and they said I would have to talk with the main doctor for her. And so I just went to sleep, I guess. Well, I don't think I slept much. I went back to my room, and in the morning, I got woken up by one of the neonatologists and a perinatal nurse, and some other people. And they just explained to me that she wasn't doing well. They had to put her on nitric oxide, and that she was going to need ECMO. And they didn't have it at my hospital. So my husband and I decided that I was checking out to go with her, even though they said, I wasn't supposed to. They were gonna life flight her, so they had a helicopter coming, but the hospital they were taking her to was about 45 minutes, maybe an hour away from the hospital I delivered her at. So they decided just to use an ambulance. My husband and I decided to follow the ambulance. And when we got to the other hospital, we found out that they had trouble keeping her stable in the ambulance. They were bagging her to give her air. And then the doctor at the other hospital, after they had her stabilized, came out to talk to us, and he asked us if we understood what right-sided diaphragmatic hernia was. And my mom was with me, and I lost it, and she was like asking me, Kimberly, what does it mean? What does it mean? And then the doctor was starting to explain to her that Alexandria was stable, but that she only had a 50-50 chance of survival. And it broke me pretty hard because I had been prepared for left-sided, not right-sided. So I already knew the battle she was going to go through. The following day, they did surgery to put her on ECMO, or later that day, I should say. And, I still hadn't held her or anything. So I couldn't stay away from her, even though they told me, I shouldn't be walking around. I shouldn't have left the hospital. Everything I shouldn't have done. And I just would go and sit by her bedside and try to hold her little hand because she would grip all the time. But they said don't, because it was disturbing her. because
Knew
every
her
time she heard me or her dad, she would fight her sedation because they kept her sedated, and all of her oxygen levels and blood pressure and everything else would just go wild. So they told us that we couldn't touch her or talk to her because she would get too upset. So it was rough to be there every day, and if she was awake, stand where she couldn't see me and not touch her, and if she was sleeping, still to just not touch her. But 11 days after she had been on ECMO, they decided to do the surgery to repair the hernia. So they took her in, and we got to walk with her to the operating room and everything, and give her a little kiss, you know, and just in case. And I don't remember how long the surgery was. I just know that when she was done, the doctors came out and said, it looks really, really good. Even though she was right-sided, she had enough lung mass that they didn't think that she would have any trouble breathing. And so they said to go home and get everything ready for her and start trying to pump breast milk and stuff. And that she would come home in 4 to 6 weeks. And so we went out to celebrate with our families. And then we went home, which was pretty far away from the hospital. And I washed all her clothes and I got her room all ready. And then 5 days later, my brother and his girlfriend, who was also pregnant at the time, came to see her. And as we were walking past the window of the special care nursery, as they called it at that hospital, I saw a bunch of doctors around her bed. And I asked them to wait outside while I went in to figure out what was going on. And when I went into the NICU, they said that she was having pulmonary hypertension again, and her head had swelled to like almost the length of half her body because they had put her on blood thinners to run the ECMO, and they kept doing scans of her brain to make sure there wasn't any bleeding on the brain, which there wasn't. So they told me that eventually, you know, the swelling would go away or go down. But she just looked really bad. And the doctor said, don't worry, we're not going to give up. Babies are resilient. So, you know, don't lose hope. Her main neonatologist, he decided to try to give her Viagra to try to open up her blood vessels. But he had to fight the ethics board at the hospital because they didn't want to give a baby Viagra. And basically he told them, if we don't try this, she's going to die anyway. So let's at least just try this and see if it works. So he told my husband and I, well, the first doctor, when my brother was there, told us to prepare for her death. And I walked out and just lost it and told my brother and his girlfriend that she was going to die. And then the main neonatologist that's when he said, no, we're gonna, try the Viagra, don't lose hope. So my husband and I stayed in a hotel, right, really close to the hospital. And the neonatologist told us if anything went wrong, he would call us, and we could come back to the hospital no matter what time it was. So around 5 o'clock in the morning, my cell phone rang. And I answered it crying because I knew it couldn't be good news at that time. And they told me that she had gone into renal failure. And there was poisons moving through her blood. And that she had maybe 12 hours left to live. And so if we wanted, my husband and I could come and finally get to hold her and stuff. So of course we drove to the hospital. And when we got there was so many people surrounding her little bed. And we called our families and told them she's dying and we have to say goodbye. And our families started rushing there, but they all lived far away from this hospital. And the doctors and nurses asked if we wanted to hold her with all of the machines on her, or if we wanted to sign the do not resuscitate papers and take her off of life support. So we decided. She had lived for 17 days. And all 17 days, she was fighting for her life. And she was so happy and excited to hear me or her dad. We couldn't just sit there and watch her just slowly fade away. It wasn't fair.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't sign the papers. I felt like it was me giving up. So her dad signed the papers. Then we went to sit in this room with a rocking chair. And they took everything off of her and dressed her in this like hand sewn or hand knitted baby outfit. They brought her into us, and I held her for as long as I could because it was the first and the last time I was ever gonna hold her. But her head was so big you could feel her heartbeat in the back of her head. So some of our family got there to give us support before she left. And I wouldn't let her go. So I felt her heartbeat slowing down. And I knew I couldn't hold her while she passed away. So I passed her to her dad, and he held her. And the doctor came in. I don't even know how long it had been that we had been holding her, but he came in and checked her and said, she's gone. And it was hard to give her back. It was really hard to give her back. But we did. And I don't remember much of that day. I know I was surrounded by family and friends, but it was like I was a zombie.
I'm
And
so
then I
sorry.
decided, thank you. And then I decided to donate whatever organs they could use from her body. And I guess her heart and her lungs weren't really in good shape, so they couldn't use those. But I did get a letter from I can't remember what it's called, the Organ Donation Center.
Mhm.
Gift of Hope or Gift of Life, something like that. And they had used her eyes for a baby who was born either without eyes or blind. And it gave me some comfort then that at least, even if she couldn't survive, a part of her was out there helping somebody else.
It's precious.
Yeah.
She lives on.
She lives on, yes. She lives on. And it's just sometimes hard because she was born May 8th of 2003 and she passed away May 25th of 2003. So, you know, it's April 13th and we're coming up close to what would have been her 18th birthday. So it's hard for me because I have a niece who is only 3 months younger than her, and she does look a lot similar to Alexandria. And my brothers, as a way to honor her, they named their children, their firstborn, which were all daughters, and were all born within a year. I shouldn't say all, there's 2 of them. But they were born within a year of Alexandria's passing. So I have a niece named Amber, because it starts with an A, and I have a niece named Angela that also starts with an A. And they're within a year of her. So when I see them, I feel like I am watching her grow up.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are.
I'm
It's
sorry.
nice that your family has been there to support you. And
yes, they were very supportive, very, but I was in a rush to get through my grieving process. So I don't think I've ever fully grieved for her the way you're supposed to. And that's part of why I can't get through a whole story without just losing it. Because there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her and who she would have been and what she would have looked like. And my nieces, they make it easier, but it's
and
not
your
easy.
kids, your other kids, do you share Alexandria with them?
I do. We go to her grave on her birthday and celebrate. I bring flowers or red roses. I've always put red roses on her grave. And then we sing to her, and I sit right, on top of where she's buried. And I just try to talk to her and tell her that I'll see her one day and that we love her and we miss her. But it's hard for my other kids, not so much my Danielle, who's 13, but Jackson, who's 5, he just says, why can't we dig her up? And then for her death day, I used to go and sit on the grave as well and cry. But I've decided that that's not healthy for me or my living children. So I don't do that anymore. Now I try to find ways to spend the day doing something that will take my mind off of what day it is. A couple years ago, I did my first 5K. I couldn't run the whole thing, but I ran and walked just as a way to honor her memory. And I felt so good when I got to the end of it. Like, just I finally did something other than sit and cry all day.
Yes, and she was there with you every step.
Right. I was really hoping I would not lose it this bad.
You're good. You're fine. Her memory is here with us, and I so appreciate you sharing your precious girl's story. Bringing awareness to CDH is so important. The more awareness we can bring to the world will ultimately help with CDH research and finding answers and better treatments for these CDH babies.
Right, exactly. And especially since there's no way to know what causes it, my heart goes out to other people who are going to their ultrasound hoping to find out the gender of their baby and finding out instead that their baby might not live. It's hard.
It is hard. If you had any advice for CDH families, what would that be?
Just don't lose hope. Don't lose hope, because they've come so far in their treatments and their ability to diagnose it and the procedures that they do and the way that they think as far as, what is best for these babies. So just don't lose hope, and always, always hope for the best. And sometimes maybe accept the fact that if your baby doesn't survive, it's not the end of the world. Your life will go on. You just have to do things to honor them.
I agree. You are one special lady, Kimberly, and I thank you so much for sharing Alexandria's story with us today and sharing her life and honoring her memory with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.